Hello, everyone. This is Susan Gerbic from the GSOW Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia project. Today I'm speaking with my friend David Young, who is sitting at home on a not so beautiful morning in Hong Kong.
Good morning, Susan.
I met David October 2015, which is a year ago, actually, when I was invited by Michael Bigelow and the Hong Kong Skeptics to visit and talk with him at the end of my Australian tour. And I had such a great time. David gave me his spare room, and I stayed in his beautiful apartment with him and his wife, Mary Ellen. And David took me all over Hong Kong and one day in China, and that was quite an experience. And I have numerous videos, and they're going to be in the show notes for anyone who's curious. And I have also interviewed David and Michael here on Skepticality about what's going on at the Hong Kong Skeptics. So that'll also be in the show notes as well as a reminder. David, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, I guess the thing that people want to know is my relationship with skepticism. The joke I like to make is that I'm not a scientist, but that's only a recent discovery. I grew up thinking that I did know something about science until one day I realized during a casual conversation with someone that I honestly didn't know the difference between virus and bacteria, and I didn't really know what antibiotics were and how they worked. And so I made a little bit deeper dive into those topics. And at the same time, this was when iPods were new and exciting. I was given a gift of an iPod, and I was looking for content to fill it up. And so those two events in my life collided. And the next thing I know, I started listening to Skepticality, Skeptoid, Skeptics Guide to the Universe, and all kinds of other science podcasts, and just fell in love. I'll tell you what happened. I found my people, as they say. I didn't know I was a skeptic until I started listening to those podcasts, and then I realized, wow, this is how I think. I'm a skeptic.
Wow, that is so awesome. That's kind of how I fell into it too. I attended a conference, and the people I met, I just felt a connection, and they were all very different. I'm also not a scientist, and I don't know if I could easily explain the difference between bacteria or virus. And so today I wanted to talk to you about a topic that's not really talked about, at least not a lot. And you have done recently an interview that I found very moving and emotional with a friend of yours there in Hong Kong. You guys sat down and had a beer together and recorded, 45 minutes or something. And he's a Christian. I guess he's a ex-pastor. And you two, you being an atheist, had a very interesting conversation about death and dying. And I would like, I'm not going to go into detail here on Skepticality just because of time's sake, but I'm going to hopefully send everyone over to that interview because it's really well done if they want to know more details and things like that. But so
let me handle the tough language, Susan.
Go for it.
Let me handle the tough parts. I think what you're alluding to here is the fact that I'm terminally ill, and that's a recent diagnosis as well. Just within the last 8 months, I was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which of course is an untreatable, incurable disease that in almost all cases is terminal. Of course, the most famous person within our community that has ALS is Stephen Hawking, and he has a very, very rare form of self-limiting ALS. And so my days are now numbered, and so my perspective on the world is not unique, but it's rare. And so that interview that I did with Steve Hackman was to talk about those issues.
Right.
Yeah. But you wanted to talk specifically about what I think is an excellent article written by on the Skeptoid website from some months back.
Yeah. Now, Brian Dunning is a friend of mine, but before I became a friend of his, this is an older episode. I think it's from 2010.
2008.
We're going way back. But So, Brian Dunning, a long time ago, he's known for his analysis of the paranormal and, fringe paranormal things, UFOs and that kind of thing. But he wrote a very excellent episode called Despicable Vulture Scumbags.
Yes,
And it stuck with me.
I love this article. I wouldn't be surprised that I heard this podcast when it was originally broadcast, because that's right about when I started listening to skeptical podcasts. February 26, 2008. It's actually podcast number 89. So if people want to look it up, I'm sure you'll put it in your show notes. But in this particular case, someone writes to Brian, who has a friend who's been diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis as well. And Brian gives him some advice and cuts and pastes some advice from what I think are other clever people as well about how to deal with less than questionable treatments for people who are terminally ill. This situation scares people. And if they don't have a worldview or a world philosophy in place prior to this diagnosis or prior to an event like this in their life, they may reach out to almost anything. And I can understand why they would. I said to you, I think pre-interview here, Susan, that I was insulated from these things by the fact that I did have a background in skepticism. And so if I were to read a description of a product that include the words, like healing energy or neurolinguistic power or something along those lines, I'd immediately see that as quackery. But I wouldn't have. Maybe 10 years ago, I wouldn't have. And so that's the power of skepticism. It's the power of the movement and how much it educates people. Specifically, one of the things that I tell people about alternative medicines is, one, it has to be free, and two, it has to be harmless, meaning no side effects whatsoever. The reason I always stress the free one is because you definitely do not want your provider to be economically motivated. The joke I'm from Hong Kong, right? So acupuncture here is huge. And the joke here is always, how does an acupuncturist determine the course of treatment? How many appointments might you need? How long will you have to take treatment? And we always say, well, that totally depends on your budget.
Same with the chiropractor.
Exactly. Same with the chiropractor, because acupuncturists can't tell you in advance how long you might have to take the treatment. But if you can afford it, you should take it every week. You definitely don't want your quack provider to be economically motivated. So the moment it is expensive, or even if there's a small charge, you gotta pay attention to that. And then the second one is, there absolutely positively can be no side effects, if there are any side effects whatsoever. So if you're actually taking something orally, or injecting something, or anything that even takes up your time, if it's not additionally making you feel comfortable and providing some hope and support to those around you, then just stay away from it. Like one of the lines in this article just says, I wouldn't spend 1 minute trying to find the unfindable or trying to discover the undiscoverable. Right? It's not good use of your time. And if I could speak to hope, it's the most dangerous thing of all. When you are definitely terminally ill, if you can't accept that, get some help accepting it. There's no point in fighting it indefinitely. My disease, much different than cancer. With cancer these days, there's hope. With a lot of other diseases these days, there's hope. For me, I know there's not. And so I have to do now what everyone in this movement talks about. Living life to the fullest every day, because it's the one life we have. I just happen to have a different lens now. And it really helps me focus. And the final paragraph here in Brian's article says, you have obligations to those people around you. And you do. I find myself in a situation where I don't want to preach too much here Susan. So cut me off if I go too long, but
No, you're great.
there's and I would appreciate it if people listen to the other podcast. There's an extraordinary importance here for balancing selfishness with selflessness. You are unique in that particular experience, but you are not alone. This is a shared event in the lives of many people, and as the one who's got the diagnosis, you have to be really aware of that. I like some advice that I got from a counselor recently. He told me I had a superpower and that I had to use it wisely, and I kind of agreed with him. So yeah, I really appreciated you sending me this article, because I agree with what Brian says here wholeheartedly. And I'd recommend anyone who finds themselves in this situation. When I say in this situation, I mean either it's happening to you or you know somebody it's happening to. Read this article, because it's worth it.
Right. Well, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. The thing I wanted to also mention is, I mean, I know what I went through was nothing compared to what you're going through, but it is a life-changing event when you find out that you have some sort of diagnosis. And I came out on Skepticality and announced that I had breast cancer in 2013, and I had to make a decision. Did I want to be public about it? Did I want to keep it kind of on the lowdown, and just kind of hide the fact that I was going to be bald and that kind of thing? And I thought about it for a while, and I decided that I wanted to just come all the way out, not just a little bit out.
Yeah.
And I did that because of what Brian's saying here. And I remember reading this article, and I mean, listening to the Skeptoid episode and thinking about this whenever I found out I had cancer, is that people are around you and they're watching and they're going through it themselves, or they're going to be going through it themselves. I mean, we're all terminal, obviously. I mean, I can easily die before you. There's nothing, we don't know, what's going to happen next. So I thought about this and I said, I'm going to come all the way out, and I'm going to let people kind of experience it with me if they want and learn. And I kind of felt like we had a responsibility as being public skeptics, you and I, in a way to just, I don't even know how best to say it, but to just let people go through it and see that, we were doing this without having to go and, get homeopathy or naturopathy or whatever.
I agree. And here's what I would say is that you and I are very public people. We spend a lot of our time in front of others, talking, convincing, pitching. But that doesn't mean that it's right for everyone to come out. One of the things that I stress is that people intensify when they find themselves in situations like this. Their already existing personality. I don't find that people have massive changes in their personality. In fact, what happens is they become more of themselves. And if people are private, they should remain private. And if people are public, then maybe they can do something for others. But that doesn't mean that every aspect of your life would be public. I'm very public about my skepticism and the other things that I run here in Hong Kong. But I'm not public about my family life. I'm not public about other aspects of my life. And so everybody has to make their own decision. You and I are being open about this. And I honestly am hoping that this has a positive effect on people's lives, and that they get something from it. But at the same time, I'm not saying that being public is right for anyone else. I just know that it's right for me. It's helping me to deal with it, and it's because it's one last thing I can do. That's the way I feel about it. One last thing I can do.
And as I was saying, I would definitely agree. But I'd also say that, we need to be there and set an example. At least that's how I feel, so that our children and the others watching us can can learn
I would agree.
that they could be sitting on the couch moaning and groaning about how awful their life is and why were they dealt this horrible blow, when I think that there's still so much we could do.
I agree, except that I would say, whether you're public about it or private, you're still an example to others.
That's true.
Yeah, how you handle it is entirely. People have to preserve their own dignity and the dignity of those who are close to them through this process. And so trying to suddenly be somebody else, probably not a good strategy. Right?
Right.
As you're going out the door. That's what
I totally agree.
Yeah. And of course, look, we both know that this movement, skepticism, is just filled with people who give of themselves to others. There are very few, if any, people getting rich off skepticism. And yet,
nobody that I know.
Yeah, exactly,
nobody I know.
Exactly. And yet thousands of us flock to it every year and contribute what we can. This is a selfless movement. It truly is.
I have some really great memories of Hong Kong and China with you and Michael. I had such a fabulous time. I really appreciate all that you guys did.
We enjoyed having you. Very early on, in my participation within the skeptical movement, when I looked at conferences in the United States, I eagerly wanted to attend so badly, because there weren't a lot of skeptics here in Hong Kong, or at least I hadn't yet found my people, so to speak. But I quickly realized that if I was to take the budget and spend it on myself and go to Las Vegas, or go to New York, or go to California, go to these great conferences, I could do a lot more by bringing someone from the West to here, and it would cost me the same, right? And so that's what I did. Yeah, so we continue to bring people over. And then everyone here can meet that person and speak to that person. And I know people really enjoyed you being here, really enjoyed you talking to you, and our other guests as well. And so now's my chance to give a plug, right? I can do that.
Right,
exactly.
go for it.
Okay, so
you're on Skepticality, one of the biggest skeptical podcasts there is.
So the Hong Kong Society for Science and Skepticism is bringing Jerry Coyne to Hong Kong. He's coming here 2 weeks from today, actually, he arrives. And he'll be here for about 2 weeks. And he's actually going to speak at the Hong Kong Literary Festival. And we're really, really excited about that. And again, there's definitely a narcissism or a selfishness involved in this. Like I said, it's a balance. We get the opportunity to spend day after day in close proximity to a guy like Jerry Coyne. And a guy someone like Susan Gerbic or Rebecca Watson, right? Like as we've done in the past. And possibly in the future, others. So that's what we benefit from. But then we share him here in this city with the hundreds of other skeptics that are now members of our group. And we're pretty excited about doing it that way for us. Do I still go to my favorite conferences whenever I can? But I definitely like bringing people here, and we enjoyed having you.
And I have lots of videos, as I said, and photos in the show notes for you all. So what do you foresee for the skeptic community?
As a whole? Or
do you think there's something working on where should we go from here?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
I don't think I'm that profound. I think what I'd like to say is that I think what will make the skeptical movement successful is what makes every successful movement successful. And that is those of us who are leaders and who are prominent and who are promoting have to keep in mind that we're not doing this for ourselves. Right? We've got to continue to be as selfless as possible. Now, having said that, I don't want my leaders to be void of a desire that drives them. The people who are taking over my skeptical organization here in Hong Kong, I tell them, you absolutely have to want to do this for yourself. But wanting to do it for yourself should be driven by wanting to do it for others, right? If you don't have that drive within you, and at the same time be able to give as much as you can of yourself to others, and then this movement will fail. As soon as, demagogues and megalomaniacs and narcissistic dicks get in charge of anything, it gets driven into the ditch. GOP. Yeah, so I think the skeptical movement is on the right track. I find more and more people involved of that philosophy than any other philosophy. I think about how much people have sacrificed in terms of time and or treasure. The time, talent, and treasure. I think those are the terms the Catholic Church likes to use when they talk about development. So many people in this movement have given so much of their time, talent, and treasure, and that's what we'll need to keep doing for this to work. Thank you for what you contribute. Thank you to all your listeners for what they contribute. Don't be afraid to give of yourself to others as much as possible. We have an important message. Skepticism is access to science for the non-scientist. It changed my life and insulated me from a lot of what could have been serious bullshit. So thank you to everyone who's already involved, and keep it up.